was born in a town most people only drove through without stopping, Maplewood, Pennsylvania. It wasn't the kind of place you'd ever see in a travel magazine. Just rows of old brick houses, a diner that smelled like burnt coffee, and a single gas station that doubled as the town's gossip hub. But behind the town's charm, there was something else. Something people didn't talk about out loud. You see, my family's house sat on land that used to be part of the old Maplewood Cemetery. The cemetery had been officially relocated back in the 1920s when the town council wanted to build new housing. They said all the bodies were moved to a bigger cemetery up on Pine Hill. But everyone in town knew the truth. Not all of them were moved. Some coffins were too rotted to dig out. Some graves were unmarked, forgotten. And some were left behind because no one dared touch them. My parents didn't tell me any of this when I was little. To them, it was just cheap land. They always joked about how lucky we were to have gotten the place for almost nothing. But cheap land usually comes with a cost. And ours came with the dead. The first time I saw them, I was 6. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me. The air felt heavy, thicker than it should have been. That's when I noticed the shadows in the corner. They weren't shaped like furniture or anything I recognized. They were shaped like people, tall, thin, unmoving. At first, I thought it was my dad, maybe standing there watching me. But when I whispered, "Dad?" the shadow tilted its head at an angle that no human neck should ever bend, and then it glided closer. I don't remember screaming. What I do remember is waking up the next morning in the same bed, the shadow gone, my mom brushing her hand through my hair like nothing happened. But it wasn't a dream, because that night, it came back. As I grew up, I realized I wasn't just imagining things. I would hear footsteps pacing the hallway at night, even when everyone else was asleep. Whispers through the vents, like someone's mouth pressed against the metal grates. And sometimes, in the middle of the day, I'd catch sight of someone standing at the edge of our backyard, staring at me through the glass door. Only there was never anyone there when I looked again. By the time I was 12, I stopped telling my parents about it. They didn't believe me. They said I had an overactive imagination. But I knew better. I knew what I saw. And deep down, I think they knew too. Because even though they never admitted it, there were rules in our house that didn't make sense unless they'd seen the same things. Never leave the windows open at night. Always keep a Bible by the bed. And if you heard your name being called after midnight, you didn't answer. When I turned 18, the visions slowed down. I don't know why. Maybe the ghosts got tired of me, or maybe I'd grown too used to them to notice. For a while, I thought it was over. I went to college out of state, started building a life away from Maplewood, and convinced myself the whole thing was just childhood paranoia. But I was wrong. Because after graduation, when I couldn't find a job, I moved back home. And that's when everything started again. Only this time, it was worse. Much worse. One night, not long after I came back, I was walking home from the diner after a late shift. The streets were empty, the kind of quiet that makes your footsteps sound too loud. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and I had to pass right by the old cemetery, the part that still existed, the part that hadn't been relocated. I never liked that stretch of road. The air there was colder, like stepping into a refrigerator. The streetlights always flickered, buzzing as though they were about to go out, and the iron fence around the cemetery was rusted and bent in places, like something had been clawing at it from the inside. That night, as I passed, I heard it. A voice. My name. It wasn't whispered. It was spoken, clear as day, in a low, gravelly tone that made every hair on my body stand on end. Ethan. I froze. My parents had warned me about this exact thing when I was a kid. Don't answer if you hear your name at night. But standing there, staring into the shadows between the gravestones, I felt something pulling me closer. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe a few seconds, maybe longer. But I swear, I saw movement, a figure just beyond the fence, and it was smiling. That was only the beginning. What followed over the next weeks turned my life upside down. Objects in the house moving on their own, doors opening at night, the shadows returning, darker than before. And one thing that terrified me most, every morning when I woke up, there was dirt on the floor beside my bed, like someone had been standing there, or like something had climbed out of the ground to watch me sleep. For weeks, I tried to ignore it. The dirt on my floor, the whispers at night, the flickering lights. But ignoring something doesn't make it go away. If anything, it makes it worse. It started with little things. The sound of scratching under the floorboards, cold spots in the hallway that never went away, no matter how high we cranked the heat, doors that slammed shut even when no windows were open. Then came the smell. Rotten earth mixed with something sour, like spoiled meat. I'd wake up in the middle of the night gagging, the stench so strong it burned my throat. Sometimes it was faint, lingering only in the basement. Other times, it filled my room so completely that I had to sleep with my head buried under the blankets, praying for morning. I told myself it was mold, old pipes, anything but what it really was. But then the digging started. One night, I was lying in bed, phone in hand, scrolling through job listings. That's when I heard it. Scrape. At first, I thought it was an animal outside, maybe a raccoon. But the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from beneath me, like fingernails clawing at wood. My whole body went rigid. I held my breath, listening. The scratching grew louder, more frantic, until it sounded like something was right under my bed. I jumped to my feet, heart hammering, and pressed my ear to the floor. That's when I heard it. A voice, muffled, distant, like it was rising up through 6 feet of soil. Let me out. I bolted out of the room, nearly tripping down the stairs. I slept on the couch that night with every light on, TV blaring static just to drown out the sound. The next morning, I checked under the bed. The floorboards were scratched, deep grooves carved into the wood. And there, wedged between 2 boards, was a fragment of something pale. At first, I thought it was just a piece of plaster, but when I picked it up, I realized it was smooth, curved, bone. I didn't tell my parents. What was I supposed to say? Hey, Mom, Dad, the dead people under our house are trying to claw their way back up. They already thought I was crazy, but I couldn't keep it to myself either. So I told my best friend, Ryan. Ryan wasn't the kind of guy who believed in ghosts. He was the skeptic, the one who always needed proof. But when I showed him the bone, even he went quiet. Dude, he muttered, turning it over in his hands. This is human. You think it's from the old cemetery? I asked. Ryan shrugged. Where else would it be from? But, man, this is bad. Like, real bad. I wanted him to say something comforting, to laugh it off, to tell me it was all in my head. But he didn't. Instead, he pocketed the bone and said, I'll ask my uncle. He works for the county records office. If anybody knows about this land, it's him. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't, because I wasn't alone. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt them, standing there, watching, breathing. At one point, I swore I felt a hand brush my ankle under the blankets. I jerked awake, flicked on the lamp, and found the sheets smeared with dirt, like something had crawled into bed with me. 2 days later, Ryan came back with news. You were right, he said, dropping a stack of yellowed papers onto my kitchen table. This lot? They never moved all the bodies. Some graves were left behind, and guess where they built right over? My stomach sank. My house. He nodded. Not just your house, man. This whole block. But yours was built right on top of what they called the paupers section. People who couldn't afford proper burials. No markers, no records, just dumped in the dirt. I stared at the papers, my hands trembling. Old maps, burial logs, council meeting notes, all of them confirming what I already knew deep down. We weren't alone. We never had been. That night, I dreamt of the ground splitting open, pale arms clawing their way out, fingers caked in soil, mouths opening in silent screams, eyes black as the grave. I woke to find my window open, dirt on the sill, and a whisper in my ear. Ethan. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was too dry, my body frozen in place. But I felt it lean close enough that its breath was cold against my skin. And then, for the first time, I heard it laugh. I didn't tell Ryan about the laugh. I didn't have to. The next morning, he showed up at my door with the kind of face you only see on people who've just watched a car crash in slow motion. Don't be mad, he said, standing on the porch with the same pale fragment cradled in his palm. I brought it back. You were supposed to keep that out of here, I said, but it came out more like a whisper than a warning. I did, he said. I left it on my nightstand last night. When I woke up, it was in my mouth. We stared at each other. The wind dragged at the maple leaves, turning their undersides like fish flashing silver. Somewhere, a crow called 3 times in a row, too even, too deliberate. Okay, I said, stepping aside. You better come in. He didn't move. Ethan, it followed me home. We put the bone on the kitchen table because that felt like neutral ground, like a place for objects, not people. The house felt colder with it inside, like the thermostat was lying to us. We tried rational things first. Gloves, a Ziploc bag, a cardboard box, the freezer, anything to make it less intimate. Ryan's hands shook when he taped the lid. Your uncle say anything else? I asked. Ryan nodded toward the papers we'd left out. He found a council notice from 1919. They expanded the cemetery after the Spanish flu. Too many dead, not enough consecrated ground. The town used the lot behind your place as overflow for a few months. I didn't like the word overflow. It made people sound like water that had gotten out of place. Unmarked? I asked. Mass graves, Ryan said. Pauper section is right under your house. And one more thing. He flipped through the photocopies and slid one toward me. It was a page from a ledger, the ink so faded it looked like smoke. Next to a crooked number, 23B, someone had written a single word, unconsecrated. What does that even mean? I asked, but I knew. It meant no priest, no prayers. It meant nothing between them and us. Ryan swallowed. There were complaints. People heard voices, smelled. You know. He gestured at the air, as if he could shape the rot with his hands. They hired a groundskeeper, Hartley North, to manage the relocation. He quit after 3 weeks. Said the ground wouldn't give back what it had taken. I touched the edge of the ledger page and felt something snag at my fingertip, like a thread that had been waiting a century to catch on living skin. Give it back, I said, not meaning to say it out loud. Ryan looked at the box on the table. That's what I thought too. That night, we decided to return the bone to the earth. We waited until the sky turned into that iron gray that makes everything look like an X-ray. We took a shovel, a flashlight, and the box. We didn't tell my parents. We didn't tell anyone. There are some errands you only run with the person who sat next to you through middle school science and taught you how to fix a leaky sink. Ryan carried the box. I carried the shovel. We went out the back door, past the sagging fence, to the spot where the grass never grew right. If you've never dug in ground that belonged to the dead, I don't know how to explain it. It isn't just dirt. It's compacted time. It's promises and names and last breaths, all layered and tamped down until the earth forgets how to be light. Every shovel felt wrong, like prying up someone's eyelids. We didn't need to dig far. 4 inches down, the blade hit wood. We froze. Ryan pointed the flashlight. What I'd thought was a root was a strip of old coffin lid, soft as sponge cake around the edges and black as old tea in the middle. There were scratches on it. Too many scratches, crossing over each other, frantic and deep. You don't get scratches like that from roots. We should put it back, Ryan said. Yeah, I said, but my hands weren't listening. They were doing the math that fear won't let your mouth do. If we opened enough of a gap, we could slide the bone back through the wood. We could close the circle. We could follow the rule I didn't know existed until it was too late. Don't keep what the ground gives you. I worked the shovel side to side, widening the slit. Something sweet and old drifted up, that funeral parlor sugar that pretends to hide rot. Ryan made a sound in his throat and took a step back. Hurry, he said. Please. I took the box from him and peeled the tape with my thumbnail. The bone lay inside, innocent as a seashell. I grabbed it with gloved fingers, and for a second I thought I felt it pulse. Not like a heartbeat, more like the way a fridge hums at the edge of your hearing. I held it above the slit. The ground moved. Not a lot. Just enough for the soil to settle deeper, like something below had shifted to make space. Do it, Ryan said. His voice was too loud, like a noise you make in a museum when you realize you've stepped over a velvet rope. I slid the bone through the slit in the wood. It fell with a whisper, not a thud, not a clatter, like silk sliding over silk. The hole breathed out. We both stumbled back. The flashlight beam jittered across the dirt, the fence, the trees. The night pressed closer. Something in the dark laughed again, but not at us, around us. Like the sound was evenly distributed, piped in from all directions. We're done, I said. We're done. We weren't. I didn't sleep. Neither did Ryan. He camped on the couch, and we left the TV on some home shopping channel because it felt less threatening than static. At 3:13 a.m., the presenter on the screen stopped mid-sentence. Her mouth still moved, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. Ethan, it said, And the TV speakers aren't supposed to sound like a mouth that's full of soil, but somehow they did. You kept it. I grabbed the remote. The batteries fell out and skittered under the coffee table. The picture froze. The presenter's eyes had been looking at the camera. Now they were looking at us. Ryan whispered, "Don't answer." I didn't. My phone lit up on the end table anyway. Unknown caller. I watched my own name crawl across the screen like a worm. It rang twice and stopped. The TV blinked back to life. The presenter was selling bracelets again, chatting about birthstones like nothing had happened. "Okay," Ryan said, breathing hard. "New rule." I nodded. We said it together without planning it. We don't answer after midnight. We didn't have to write them down. The rules write themselves when you live on bad ground. Don't answer when called after dark. Keep the windows closed. Don't keep what the earth gives you. Don't dig. We were already late to that one. If something knocks from beneath, you don't knock back. We added a sixth later. I'll get to that. The next day at the diner, I tried to pretend that life was still life. I took orders. I refilled coffee. I told Mrs. Delaney we were out of lemon meringue and watched disappointment fold her face into neat, familiar lines. I could almost breathe again. Then table 7 waved me over. 2 teenage girls, hair dyed the colors of hard candy, were giggling at something on a phone. "Did you see this filter?" one asked, pointing the camera at me. "It makes everyone look like..." She stopped. Her eyes went wide. "Okay, what the hell?" She turned the phone so I could see the screen. It showed me, sure, but not the me who just walked up, pen behind my ear, apron still damp from rinsing glasses. On the screen, I was standing behind myself, grayer, blurred around the edges like I'd been shot through a dirty window. And behind that version of me, farther back, in the reflection in the pie case, stood 5 other shapes. Their faces were the color of old paper. I told myself it was a glitch. I told myself everything you tell yourself when the thing you believe in is losing ground. I comped their fries and walked into the kitchen and sat down on a crate of canned tomatoes because my knees didn't know what else to do. When I came out, the girls were gone. On the table was a napkin with a drawing of a stick figure behind another stick figure. The one in back had longer arms. The caption said, "He's behind you," and a smiley face that didn't look like a smile. I called Ryan. "Don't come here," I said. "I'm already outside," he said. "You should see this." We drove to Pine Hill, the new cemetery on the ridge, because if the town had a place where answers lived, it would be there among the stones that still had names. On the way, Ryan told me about his night after he left my house at dawn. His kitchen faucet had turned itself on and run until the sink overflowed. When he reached to shut it off, the handle was ice cold, so cold his skin stuck to the metal. He'd yanked his hand away and left a layer of himself behind, like a stamp. And when I turned around, he said, someone had written in the steam on the window. "What?" He didn't answer right away. He just tapped the dash with a rhythm I didn't recognize at first. 3 taps, a pause. 2 taps, a pause. 3 taps. When recognition hit, it ran hard and fast. The old knock you do when you want the person inside to open up. "What did it say, Ryan?" He looked at the road. "Open the door." We didn't talk after that. The trees did the talking, bent over the road, making a tunnel we had to drive through even if we didn't want to. The maples at the top were already turning, little tongues of scarlet licking the edges of the leaves. Fall was arriving. Everything dies better in fall. At Pine Hill, the groundskeeper on duty was a woman in her 50s with forearms like braided cable. Her name patch said Charlene. She didn't look surprised when we asked about Hartley North. "Don't hear that name much," she said, unlocking a shed and rooting around in a drawer full of index cards. "He was a temp back before I got here. Quit without taking his last check. Folks in town called him the listener. Said he could hear things that weren't traveling through air." "You believe that?" Ryan asked. Charlene slid a card onto the counter. "Belief's not in my job description," she said. "But I'll tell you what, some grounds are quieter than others." The card had a plot map drawn by hand, each block labeled with a code. I found 23B and didn't realize I'd stopped breathing until my chest hurt. "That section ever get moved?" I asked, pointing. Charlene's eyes ticked up to mine and then back to the card. "That section was never here," she said. 23B was an administrative fiction, paperwork to make people feel better about what wasn't done. "In Maplewood," Ryan said. Charlene nodded once. "Behind the old fence," she said. "The line between is and was gets blurry when nobody's willing to say is out loud." "We tried to put something back," I said, and she didn't ask what. She just reached under the counter and set a small tin on the map. It rattled. "What's that?" Ryan asked. "Salt," she said. "And nails." She looked at me long enough to make sure I was hearing it, with whatever part of myself still knew to be careful. "Line your thresholds. Windows, doors, the mouth of the basement. Rusted is best." "We can't keep them out," I said, and hated how it sounded like a child learning that the door lock is just a polite request. "You can slow them down," Charlene said, "and you can follow the rules." She paused. "Don't answer when called at night. Don't keep gifts from the ground. Don't dig where you didn't plant. Don't invite." "Invite?" Ryan asked. Charlene's mouth did a small, grim thing. "That's the 6th rule," she said, "and you'd be surprised how many ways there are to break it." We drove home with the tin on my lap like a lapdog nobody wanted. We salted the windows and doors. We found a coffee can of old square nails in my dad's workbench and laid one above each frame. The house looked like we were expecting a storm that wind couldn't make. It helped. That first night, the house settled like a tired animal. The scratching under the floor dulled. The smell receded to the corners. Around midnight, the power hiccuped and came back. The lamps didn't flicker. That felt like a win. At 2:06 a.m., someone knocked from inside the basement wall. I didn't go down. I didn't answer. I lay on the couch with the salt tin on my chest and counted my breaths in groups of 3s until the counting ran out of numbers. At 3:13, my phone lit up again. No ring, just a voice message icon. I put the phone face down. The screen lit the table like a promise. I didn't listen. Not then. I fell asleep sometime after 4. I don't remember dreaming. I remember waking with sunlight on my face and a taste in my mouth like iron. Ryan was gone. The front door was closed, salt line unbroken, nail still resting where I'd left it. His shoes weren't by the couch. His keys weren't on the hook. On the coffee table, my phone waited patiently with its unplayed message and a new one underneath it, time-stamped 3:17 a.m. I pressed play. Static. Then a voice that was mine but not mine, like someone had recorded me in an empty room, and then stretched the tape until the pitch went soft. "I'm going down to the basement," it said. The second message was shorter. No voice, just a low scraping, and what might have been a breath, and something like the word down repeated 3 times in a cadence that belonged to shovels. I stood up too fast. The world briefly blackened at the edges and then slotted back together. I grabbed the tin. I grabbed the nail box. I grabbed myself. At the basement door, I stopped. The salt line was undisturbed, but it wasn't there. It looked like it was there, but when I leaned closer, the crystals were too uniform, too clean, like the idea of salt instead of salt itself. I touched it. My fingertip went through like smoke. They had learned a new trick. "Don't invite," I said out loud to the empty kitchen, to Charlene's 6th rule, to the part of me that wanted to run down those steps because my friend might be on the floor in the dark needing me. "Don't invite." I broke the rule. I opened the door. Cold slid up my legs the way water does when you step into a river too fast. Each step down felt longer than the last, like the stairs had added a tread or two while I wasn't looking. The pull chain light clicked on. The bulb glowed the color of old teeth. The cinder block walls breathed out that damp, mineral smell you only get in basements and caves in the backs of throats. "Ryan?" I said, because sometimes you do the wrong thing even when you promised yourself you wouldn't. "You down here?" Something answered, but it wasn't words. It was 3 knocks, then 2, then 3. I set the salt tin on the floor and turned in a slow circle. The basement looked like my basement, which is to say, a washer that only pretends to spin, a dryer you have to kick to make start, a workbench with a vise that belonged to my grandfather, a wall of shelves full of paint cans and mason jars, and a bright orange extension cord that has never once been put away properly. In the back wall, behind the water heater, the cinder blocks had shifted. Not a lot. Just enough to make a seam. Just enough to suggest that the wall wasn't a wall at all, but a door that had tried very hard to look like a wall and had finally gotten tired of it. "Ryan?" I said again, but I was asking the seam, not the air. It blew out a breath so cold it made my teeth ache. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. The seam widened a fraction, as if whatever was behind it had leaned its weight against the bricks to peer through. The gap was the width of 2 fingers, then 3. In that dark slice, something pale moved, like a fish turning in deep water where light doesn't reach. I backed away until the back of my knees met the bottom stair, and then I remembered the 6th rule, the way you remember the name of someone you loved after years of seeing their face everywhere but not in the right places. Don't invite. Words are invitations. Doors are invitations. Questions are invitations. Even attention can be an invitation if you give it the right shape. I stopped looking at the seam. I stared at the nail I'd brought, at the rust like dried blood along its shank. I held it like a talisman, which is funny because nails were made to hold things in place, not keep them out. I wanted to pound the nail into the seam. I wanted to seal it shut, to staple the world back where it belonged. But what you want and what you can do are often 2 different maps of the same town, and the roads don't always line up. Something slid against the other side of the wall. Not fingers, not a hand, something broader. A shoulder, maybe, or a face. "Ethan," it said, and I finally understood. It wasn't calling my name like a hook to pull me closer. It was practicing, trying out the shape of me in its mouth, getting ready. I went up the stairs without turning around, because I didn't trust my neck to be a neck and not a hinge. I closed the basement door and poured salt from the tin into a fresh line so thick it looked like snow. I set 3 nails across the top of the frame. I pulled the fridge in front of the door. I sat on the floor and called Ryan. His phone rang on the other side of the door. It rang twice, stopped, and then my phone buzzed in my hand. A third message, 30 seconds long. I didn't play it. I couldn't. The house was listening. I did the only brave thing left. I went to the porch, sat on the top step with the sun in my face and my feet on the boards and the good, thin smell of maple leaves around me, and I called Charlene. When she picked up, I said, "What do you do when the door in your house opens from the inside?" She didn't ask for an address. She said one word, like an order and a prayer. "Neighbors." "Neighbors?" I asked. "Do you have any?" "Mrs. Delaney," I said, picturing her lemon meringue disappointment. "Go to her porch," Charlene said. "Sit on it. Wait until dusk. Don't go back inside your house until the streetlights come on. Then listen." "For what?" "For whether your name sounds like your name when somebody says it," she said, and hung up. I looked at my front door. I looked at the hallway beyond it. The house breathed. The house had lungs. I stood up. I took one step toward Mrs. Delaney's. The maple leaves made their fish belly turn again in the wind. Behind me, from the house, through the shut door, my own voice said, too close and too right, "Ethan?" Wait. I did not answer. I walked. And something inside the house walked too, pace matched to mine, steps soft and patient, as if we had all the time in the world. Words are invitations. Doors are invitations. Questions are invitations. Even attention can be an invitation if you give it the right shape. I stopped looking at the seam. I stared at the nail I'd brought, at the rust like dried blood along its shank. I held it like a talisman, which is funny because nails were made to hold things in place, not keep them out. I wanted to pound the nail into the seam. I wanted to seal it shut, to staple the world back where it belonged. But what you want and what you can do are often 2 different maps of the same town, and the roads don't always line up. Something slid against the other side of the wall. Not fingers, not a hand, something broader. A shoulder, maybe, or a face. "Ethan," it said, and I finally understood. It wasn't calling my name like a hook to pull me closer. It was practicing, trying out the shape of me in its mouth, getting ready. I went up the stairs without turning around, because I didn't trust my neck to be a neck and not a hinge. I closed the basement door and poured salt from the tin into a fresh line so thick it looked like snow. I set 3 nails across the top of the frame. I pulled the fridge in front of the door. I sat on the floor and called Ryan. His phone rang on the other side of the door. It rang twice, stopped, and then my phone buzzed in my hand. A third message, 30 seconds long. I didn't play it. I couldn't. The house was listening. I did the only brave thing left. I went to the porch, sat on the top step with the sun in my face and my feet on the boards and the good, thin smell of maple leaves around me, and I called Charlene. When she picked up, I said, "What do you do when the door in your house opens from the inside?" She didn't ask for an address. She said one word, like an order and a prayer. "Neighbors." "Neighbors?" I asked. "Do you have any?" "Mrs. Delaney," I said, picturing her lemon meringue disappointment. "Go to her porch," Charlene said. "Sit on it. Wait until dusk. Don't go back inside your house until the streetlights come on. Then listen. For what? For whether your name sounds like your name when somebody says it, she said, and hung up. I looked at my front door. I looked at the hallway beyond it. The house breathed. The house had lungs. I stood up. I took one step toward Mrs. Delaney's. The maple leaves made their fish belly turn again in the wind. Behind me, from the house, through the shut door, my own voice said, too close and too right, "Ethan?" Wait. I did not answer. I walked. And something inside the house walked too, pace matched to mine, steps soft and patient. As if we had all the time in the world, I should have run. Should have packed a bag, driven until the gas gauge screamed empty, left Maplewood to rot. But you can't outrun a house you grew up in. You can't leave behind ground that already marked you. So I went back. I stood in front of the basement door with the iron key in my hand. The wood was swollen, breathing like lungs. On the other side, I heard footsteps. Ryan's. Slow. Careful. "Ethan," his voice said. "Help me." I closed my eyes. The key felt heavier, hotter. I thought of every rule. Don't answer. Don't invite. Don't keep gifts from the ground. But Ryan was my friend, the only one who'd believed me, and the house knew that. The doorknob turned. I shoved the key into the lock. It didn't fit, not exactly, but the wood screamed as if I'd stabbed it. The air shook. The basement roared with 1,000 voices at once, wailing, laughing, calling my name. "Ethan! Ethan! Ethan!" The door buckled inward, then slammed shut with such force the whole house rattled. The key seared into my palm, branding the shape of its teeth into my skin. Silence. When I opened my eyes, the door was gone. Just drywall where it had been, smooth and unbroken, like no basement ever existed. I stumbled outside, clutching my burned hand. The morning air smelled clean. No rot, no dirt. For the first time in months, I felt light. Neighbors waved. The diner was open. Maplewood looked normal. But that night, as I lay in bed, I checked my phone. 3 new messages, all from Ryan's number. The first was static. The second was breathing. The third, my own voice. "You locked me out, but doors work both ways." It's been 3 weeks since then. The basement is still gone, replaced with drywall. My parents don't remember it was ever there. But sometimes, when I walk past that wall, I feel a draft. And last night, I found dirt on the floor beside my bed. The end.